Daniel, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
It's a pleasure. I'm just enjoying Dubai and the weather and the culture here. So it's great to be here. Thanks for both bringing me here.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you here, Daniel, because I know that obviously you live in Saudi, but you were in Dubai. So we thought, look, it's a great opportunity to do a live session today and really talk
It's the
about some
first for
topics
us
here.
actually,
Yeah,
which
it's
is really
first,
cool.
first one.
Well,
Actually,
I feel honored. Like it's a little bit of pressure, but I think I can deal with it. So
listen, you made the effort to fly in, so you have to accommodate you. It's
Yeah,
important.
absolutely.
Best foot forward.
it's crazy because in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia, we have the whole week off for Eid. So
Mm.
that's one of the reasons I'm here, but also it's work and pleasure, a little bit of pleasure. So mixing the two together. So
Yeah, hopefully it's been enjoyable for you.
yeah, it's Dubai and Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, they're two different cultures pretty much. So it's good to go back and forth.
Mm.
People say that Riyadh is 10 years behind, but I don't think it is. There's something that's really unique about Riyadh in terms of the culture, the people that I love, but the convenience here is amazing. Don't love the traffic, but the convenience is cool.
Yeah, yeah.
I do often wonder, like, how do they calculate that? You know, they say, "Oh, this place is 10 years behind. This place is 5 years behind." But it's like behind what, and also like in which regard? Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. There's so many different factors. I know people that used to still be here in Dubai and they've transferred over to Riyadh and they'll say, yeah, this reminds me of Dubai 10 years ago when it was complete desert or there was barely anything here and they were just building crazy. And I think you still see a lot of that in Dubai at the moment, but in Riyadh, every couple of months, there's something new there. And there's so much energy around it, one from the locals, but also from the people that are coming here. If you've ever gone from Riyadh to Dubai during the working week, you just see a whole army of consultants going back and forth. That's always a joke. But you don't really get to feel the culture unless you live there because it's the people, it's the food, it's just the pace of things that's different. There's a little bit of speed, but also there's a little bit of chill as well. And I think also working with the locals, there's something unique there. They've got this concept called hafal, which is all about hospitality. It's they welcome you with arms. It's they want to give you coffee. They'll invite you out. They'll bring you to your house. You really feel a part of their community from day one, which you don't usually get when you're in other areas of the Gulf as well. I've been lucky enough to work in Abu Dhabi, Dubai, but also been able to travel the world as well. So done a little bit of work in Singapore, in Mexico, in the Americas in general, but also all over Europe in my consulting days and when I was freelancing. And that's really helped me open my mind up to accepting different cultures and almost jumping in head first, almost like an anthropologist. I'm less about how do I change things or this isn't what I'm so used to. It's let me learn, let me observe, let me adapt and let me try to fit in as well. I think one of the great things as well, I've got a couple of robes back in Riyadh as well. So why for the summer, obviously, which is most of the time. But when it gets cold, people forget that it actually snows in Saudi Arabia. There are certain points there. So we've got the Asia Winter Games coming up in a couple of years' time, which is pretty cool, which Saudi Arabia's hosting. But every different part of Saudi Arabia, because it's so big, you've got different micro cultures, which is amazing.
It's
Yeah.
incredible, man. I think so. You've worked in and traveled to like so many different places. Have you learned anything from each place that you've taken to the next destination that's kind of made that transition like easier? Because I know a lot of people, especially now, like thinking about moving abroad, like moving from their home country to work somewhere else. Any advice you'd give to people?
Yeah, I love that question, Jay. It's taken time, but you do open yourself up to think less as a tourist, but more around what can you learn and take away. I think I was in a very lucky position. I still am, I guess now, where I get paid to travel the world in some points. I get to learn new cultures. I get to take a little bit away from me. That's made me a better human being, a better designer, a better thinker. Also, I'm better at empathizing as well because I'm not just pushing a Western philosophy on different cultures. I'm able to take a step back, also share what I learned, but also take a little back from them as well. This really resonates when I was working in Mexico and Carretera. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. My Spanish is terrible. But learning a lot more about the culture there, I got to work with a couple of schools. I got to work with a couple of well-known companies. And it was, first of all, just understanding the culture, very friendly, great food, lots of energy in Mexico in general. And it was great just to see the environment there. And what's unique about Mexico in general, they don't see you've got one race, for example. If you go around Mexico, you can see people that look slightly different. They've got a little bit of Asian in them, maybe some a little bit darker. Some of them are from Spain, for example. They all see themselves as one people. But the way that Mexico was developed over the centuries is they've grown, they've accepted different cultures into them. Some might be local Aztecs or come from Aztec background. So it's just cool there. And that's something I've really taken away and really helped me thrive in different culture and different environments.
Yeah. And that's what they say, isn't it, Daniel, is that you learn from the different cultures, and it's kind of what gives you that creativity. It's like how you bring that into your day to day and how you kind of, create something unique, because only you can create those experiences because you've only seen those. Like not everyone, I haven't been to Mexico personally, so I wouldn't ever have that experience that you've had. So if you can bring that into your day to day, then it's a unique experience that you're bringing to customers as well, right?
Well, and that's a great point. It's something we always think about. We say this all the time as designers. We want to design with our customers and clients. It's how do we co-create something that's not just based on what we think is right. We look at the double diamond, for example, or we might think about focusing on problems, or this is the latest design tricks in terms of trends. It's more around understanding what they need and building around those problems, and then inviting them to actually own it later on. So I'm a big fan. This probably comes from my consulting days. It's not just, I'm going to give you a PowerPoint, or I'm going to give you an artifact such as a journey map, or let's say a wireframe, for example. I'm coming in and I want to empower those cultures to think a little bit differently, but to think about their unique problems. I don't want to push a solution on them. That's really key, especially as the world is evolving and becoming a lot more connected.
Yeah, I hear that. And it's, do you feel that in Saudi they're quite open to those new cultures? Because obviously, you're not from Saudi, right? And you're bringing that flavor from different parts of your experiences. Do you feel like as a region they're open to that and they're open to your learned experiences?
Definitely they are. And I think that's a huge part of what Saudi is doing. So the Vision 2030, I think all of you know about it, but I'll give you a quick breakdown. It's really trying to think about how could they shift Saudi from an oil-rich country that probably have oil for the next 100 years or so to something that's a little more diverse. They want to be the best in AI, in other technologies, in hospitality, in fashion. They really realize that this is a great time for them to grow. And I don't know when this podcast is going to be released, but Donald Trump came over a couple of weeks ago. And I think that's really changed the way that the world perceives Saudi Arabia. They're interested in new investment, new ways of thinking. And Donald Trump had a whole bandwagon of all these tech experts from like Uber, from AI companies. Elon Musk was there. And it really showed how people perceive what Saudi can become in the future. And that's going to really elevate what they look like. Going back to your question again, I do think they're open to change. One, it's just is a part of their culture. They're very entrepreneurial. I think the big unique environment from being in Saudi compared to being in the UAE or Qatar, for example, you would literally go into the airport, you would go into a taxi, and then you'd find there's a local Saudi there. They may speak English, they may not speak English or Arabic. I actually need to learn more Arabic, to be honest, but that's a long lifetime goal for me. But they're really, really good at just being friendly and learning about you. And the thing is, that driver, that might be a taxi driver, they could be a professional. So I've been in many taxis where it could be a woman or it could be a man. They could be a Saudi that's an engineer or a doctor or a lawyer. And they're just driving a taxi just to meet people. So they're very open to change. And I think that's really around their culture in terms of Saudi. They're very welcoming. They've got Hajj and other religious pilgrimages, and they're used to inviting people to their land from all over the world. So I think there is this welcomeness and openness around this. And one of the key reasons that I moved to Saudi Arabia was I love mentoring. I love empowering the next generation of designers or thinkers, whether they're startups, whether they're working in corporations, for example. And the great thing about my job is I get to mentor future talent going forward. And that pretty much puts a smile on my face. It's one of the reasons I wake up early in the morning. I do a lot of thinking and I plan out my day, and I get to train and develop the next person. Probably Mohammed, I'm going to force him to listen to this, but I always joke that he's going to replace me in 2 to 3 years because I believe in him. I know he's got raw skills, and I can't wait to develop and see where he's going to come in the next 2 or 3 years.
I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
Like, especially like what you're saying about Saudi, because from the outside, like people have whatever perception about Saudi, right? But until you actually go there, you live it. Like I spent like a year like traveling to and from Saudi like each month, and that really kind of opened my eyes to the nation, the hospitality aspects, the food. You know, like when you're kind of like ingrained kind of in the culture, it really kind of opens you up to like what they're actually trying to do, and you see it in motion. Like every trip, something different is being built. They've made progress in one way or another. And you just see the design and tech landscape just growing, like stronger and stronger and stronger. That whole point about, you know, mentoring others, right? And the next kind of generation of designers. What is your sense of like the design / tech community kind of within Saudi at the moment? And how do you see yourself kind of contributing more there?
I love that question. And there's so many different angles I can move into when I think about that. I'll be completely honest, the design maturity is very low at the moment, and it's evolving, it's growing all the time. But I think that's a great opportunity. I don't see problems. I just see opportunities to help people grow over time. I think technology, the investment that's going into Saudi Arabia at the moment, that just shows how much change can happen. To be honest, when you think about experiences, the design of apps, and just making products and services feel better, there's a lot of wiggle room to go into. And I think this is where a lot of internationals are coming in to start paving that way, but also helping the next generation of Saudis to develop over time. From an entrepreneurial and tech perspective, I think there is a big boom there. I think there is a lot of opportunities. I know quite a few accelerators that are in the region, and they're definitely trying to promote creators and people that are really focused on AI to think differently as well. So I think that's important. Another part as well, it's something that I've actually changed my mind about being in Saudi Arabia. When you speak to local Saudis, they've either traveled the world because they've learned from some of the best universities and cultures around the world, around design, around entrepreneurship and tech. There's a lot of things that I sometimes learn, and I sometimes rethink, oh, I didn't see it that way. This is another thing about mentoring. There's an element of reverse mentoring where I'm open to my team challenging me sometimes. So if they say, oh, could we do it this way? I take a step back and think and say, let's try that way. Let's open up some risk as well. So it's really cool.
Nice. And I like that point there about you're open to like learning as well. Do you feel that you've picked up things based on, you know, the mindset of the individuals that you're working with there? Do you feel like you've learned new things? You know, do you feel like you've developed quite a lot?
All the time. It's an element of I'm trying to unlearn what I knew in the past, if that makes sense. So 5 years ago, I always think this is the right way and this is the only process of doing things. But working in a fast-moving organization, so I work for Riyadh Air, we're a brand new airline. We'll be launching very soon. There's some exciting things that we're developing at the moment. It's always changing all the time. Every day, every week, there's a new challenge, a new opportunity, a new way to rethink things, just because we're quite lean as an organization. There's around 700 of us at the moment within the airline, and that's really small if you compare it to Qatar Airways or Emirates or Etihad or Singapore Airways as well, where they've got 50,000 plus employees. So we can be very nimble, we can communicate with each other, and we can really rethink how we approach problems just to create a better experience when you travel. Pretty much we're thinking about going beyond flights, so that's really key.
Nice. Yeah, I've worked you know, where I work we do have a big Saudi presence, and I've definitely learned that the customer is going to be very different there. You know, it's interesting. The whole patterns of shopping behavior, the way that they shop online and offline is completely different to anything I had experienced before. And I like that point you made about unlearning, because it's like, yeah, it's not the typical, I work in e-commerce, obviously. It's not the typical e-commerce that you're kind of driving. Usually you have to think a little bit differently, especially when you talk about delivery. Because I know that the delivery side in Saudi is a little bit different to other parts of the world. And, you know, all these things kind of play a bit of a role, right? Have you adapted to that customer there? Like, do you feel like you know the Saudi customer a little bit more since you've been working there?
I'll be lying if I said yes, I did. I'm still learning all the time. It's because in Saudi Arabia, even across different regions, there's slightly different dialects. So the way you would market in Arabic in one part, let's say Jeddah compared to Riyadh, completely different type of Arabic in terms of the wording. So that's unique in itself. The way they think about things, once again, Jeddah is a lot more relaxed, free, kind of free. If you go to other parts of Saudi Arabia, they're a bit more reserved, which is fine. If you go to Saudi Arabia, Riyadh, it's a little bit faster in terms of the way they think about things. So that's something I'm always adapting, and I'm always learning and listening to the local Saudis around me. I come in with the expertise of, I know about server design, I know about good experience, I know how do we design better businesses and business models and develop the right value propositions. But I always go back to the experts to say, tell me if this works for your region. Because I think a big issue is, and to be honest, a lot of countries are facing, if there's this Western or one way of looking at things, it's because it's worked in one place, let's adopt it and let's just create a cookie cutter approach to another environment. That doesn't work. We need to understand who the guests are, who the customers are, and what are some of the cultural norms. I think the biggest thing that really opened my eyes up is Saudi Arabia is huge. I think there's something like 34 million people across Saudi Arabia. And I think around 75% of them are under 35. They've got a unique way of engaging with the world, with technology, their beliefs, their behaviors, their expectations around how things should work is just different to everyone else. I think we're all in our mid-30s-ish. I'm going to say that I'm 36. So I'm not going to ask you both your ages. You don't need to answer that. But we were brought up on that edge of, we had technologies, phones very, very young. We're digitally native. That's been built into us. And now it's coming up to that stage of AI is creeping up as well. How does that impact our experiences and services over time? So it's looking at all different aspects.
That's interesting. Very interesting. I didn't know that about Saudi, actually, that such a high percentage are under 35, you said, right?
Yeah, 35.
Yeah, that's crazy. So how does that impact like the kind of decisions that you're making? Like, are you going, kind of tech first? So you're looking at like what the latest technology is and you're trying to kind of leverage that because you believe that the audience will be kind of early adopters? Or are you still kind of taking a kind of slowly approach when it comes to adopting new technology?
So broadly, I think it's important to look at it at different angles. So this is just my own opinion, but it's looking at it from a customer first perspective, what problems they face, how they use and how do we observe how they interact with technology, products and services. But we also try to drive technology because that's going to change the way we think about things, especially from an experience perspective. So it's a little bit of A, a little bit of B. I don't think it's good enough just to drive directly from this is the latest tech, let's just do it. There's always that analogy of what's useful versus what's cool. Cool is all the latest technology such as VR, AR. Useful is how does it impact someone's life? How does it create business value? How does it make us more efficient or make us more money or improve the guest or employee's experience over time? We need to focus on more that useful lens around technology rather than that cool side of things, rather than everyone else is doing what this is the latest thing we've learned so far.
How do you blend like or kind of like strike a balance, right? Because as soon as something new comes in, I can imagine like especially if you're trying to accelerate and become like the best at everything, right? And could be a kind of pioneer or a world leader in some of these things. Like let's take AI for example. How do you strike that balance to be like, should we be going full steam ahead or should we kind of rein ourselves back and maybe go a different direction?
So I'm a big business, and in the context of technology, it's aligning on what's the best use cases for this, for the business, for the customers over time. I think going all guns blazing just doesn't always work because you're opening yourself up to too much risk. But you also got to align with, does it link to your vision? Does it link to your value proposition? What are you trying to create? And can that technology enable you to go a lot faster? So that 10x, that 100x, would it help you? If I use a good example, if you're going to a 5-star Michelin restaurant, for example, and they've got these AI kiosks that you find in McDonald's, for example, the technology and the value proposition don't really connect. You go there because you want that personal service from the waiter. You want them to get to know your name, recommend certain food for you. They're going to look after you. It's that human to human element, human to machines and human to technology will come in and it will enable that frontline staff, the waiter, for example, to get them to think a little bit faster. They might recognize you from last time and they might have added some notes in, and that might help them better serve you, let's say Jay and your family, for example, in terms of, oh, your kids are left-handed, for example, or your kids like this certain meal. Maybe you want to give them something else that they might like. So it's just sometimes that balance there. I always think about it all depends on the situation and the value proposition you're creating at the time.
You know, one of the biggest tensions I keep hearing from teams right now is that how do we move fast with AI without losing control? They want to experiment, prototype, build, but the moment governance or compliance step in, everything shuts down. That's why I found Area extremely interesting. It's the enterprise AI orchestration and security platform that bridges that gap exactly. It lets product and design teams, or any team, roll out AI safely without cutting any corners or getting tangled in the corporate red tape, so that you can actually innovate with confidence and security. It's called Area. That's AIRIA. And you can check them out for free at area.com.
Yeah, you touched on an interesting point there around, you mentioned there about using the AI to help the way to kind of move faster, right? Or kind of speed up or get knowledge that he didn't have, that he wouldn't usually have. Is that where you feel the best use of AI would be currently? Still keeping the human factor, but integrating it or to move faster or to, what are your thoughts on that?
I think there's a balance, really. There's a classic boxing term: slow is smooth, smooth is fast, fast is dangerous. Hopefully I got that correct. I'll say that again. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast, fast is dangerous. It's all about the right cadence. And I've worked with organizations like this, if you're a 200-year-old insurance company, for example, and you're trying to adopt technology, you have a legacy way of working, which is very human, very old school boys, where they're having conversation and chats. Technology will work in certain areas, but if you just throw technology at a company like that, it's going to be really hard compared to a brand new startup that's got new ways of thinking, that have maybe brought people in from other technology companies. They're going to rapidly adopt new technology, new ways of thinking a lot faster. So there's always a balance. You've got to understand the working environment, but also who's your target customers, how they like this. So some people will always want to speak to someone over the phone rather than a chatbot. That's just the case. It's understanding your customers. And if you destroy their experience by just always giving them an option to speak to a chatbot and they don't like it, that's going to be a big issue. One thing that I'm really, really passionate about is inclusivity. So how do we design for everyone so everyone has the same level of experience? There's this beautiful analogy called the curbside experience. So imagine there's a pavement, there's a little curbside. It's designed for a person in a wheelchair, but someone with a pram, someone that's elderly, someone that's skateboarding, someone that's carrying a heavy load and they've got a trolley, for example, that curbside is designed for that person in the wheelchair, but everyone can use it in different ways. We've got to think about that when we're developing products and experiences over time. That's going to be really critical. So it's less about let's just throw technology at it, is how do we use it over time? And I go back to that use case example.
Interesting. If our listeners can't tell, you're a service designer.
Yes.
I think how it comes across through your kind of answers to the questions so far. I find this very fascinating because I've been in the region like almost coming up for 5 years soon, and I'm meeting more and more service designers, right? And if I reflect back to the UK, I rarely met service designers, weirdly. And first of all, like, what is like service design? Like, how would you kind of define it? And I want to kind of dig into why did you choose service design when I think at the time you would have probably been exposed to like traditional, say, UX design or UI design, graphic design, and why did you choose that path specifically? So,
some beautiful questions there. I'll take it back to the first one and keep it simple. What is server design? So in my head, server design is from an end-to-end side of things, you're thinking about the whole experience from a product service level, and you're thinking at all different stages. I'll give you a quick analogy. So, and you can do this at home if you don't have to close your eyes, but just imagine you go to your favorite restaurant. All you care about, we talked about it before, you would go and you'll be greeted. You'll sit down. There'll be music sometimes. The waiter will address you. They might take your coat. You might see the menu. You might see the prices. That's what the guest sees. And that's a great customer experience. A lot of restaurants really do it well. Some do it poorly. That's where service design can come in. And obviously UX, UI, customer experience, they can help that side of things as well. But there's always this supporting element that's behind the scenes that's usually invisible. So if you think about the payment systems, the processes, how do you train the employees? Setting up the restaurant itself in terms of how things are sit. Look at the art decor, for example, the music, even the smells. That's really important. And there's elements that are invisible, such as the chef. Let's say where you source all the plates from, for example, where you source all the food from, there's this invisible layer there. So it's the invisible element behind the scenes that support that frontline experience, but there's another element as well. So this is where the business strategy and thinking more strategically is really important. It's, imagine you're in a HQ, for example. I'm just going to use Nando's. We're all from the UK, but a famous chicken joint in the UK. What if your Nando's in the head office and you need to make a decision? What if you want to create more vegan meals because there's a huge movement around veganism, for example? What if there's policies you have to consider? So we have COVID 2.0 and you've got to think about safe distancing. What if you need to increase your prices because the price of chicken has increased, for example, or you have to increase salaries because minimum wages come into place, or you have to think about opening up another chain. Service designers connect all the different layers together. So it's what the customer sees, the employee experience, the policies, systems, services that come into play that are behind the scenes that elevate those experiences over time, but also the business decisions. So if I can say what service design is in one word, and it's always hard because there's so many different definitions, is service design helps an organization make better decisions to empower their employees, customers, and make things better over time. And as a business grows, for example, things will break. Sometimes you need to reimagine things because you've got new customer groups coming in. So a lot of companies are moving to Saudi. There's a new market. We've always talked about that already. There might be opportunities to create something new. Service designers can come in and they can connect different people across the business to have a clear vision of the whole end-to-end process so they can make better decisions.
What does that look like? So if I look at like a UX designer, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to put this in very basic terms. You'll see kind of wireframes, you'll see flow diagrams, etc. Right? If I see a UI designer, you're going to see kind of high fidelity designs, you're going to see prototypes, that kind of stuff. A service designer, what can someone? How does someone know that they're working with a service designer? I suppose.
This is a question I've always challenged myself, and I challenge people I mentor, challenge other people speak to. Service design shouldn't be a title. I think every designer should be strategic in their way of looking at things, where they don't just see a wireframe or a design or a design system, for example, or a prototype or a research customer. They link it all together. They think they have a more systematic approach where they think about the customer, the business needs, how to interconnect over time. How do you create influence? How do you create impact? How can that scale? And what are some of the positive and negative interactions when you change something? So a good example is we're in Dubai, for example. Dubai chocolate is all over the place at the moment. A lot of that is made from pistachios. There's a huge pistachio shortage because there's so much demand now. Funny enough, it's coming into ice cream. It was funny, I was just with my partner a few minutes ago, a little bit too much detail, but we actually went to the new Fix launch where they have the, I think it was mango and white chocolate.
It pops in your mouth as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's interesting.
She bought 3 bars, so I should have actually bought one over, but we can cut that out. No, don't need to worry about that. I'll give you a prize later on. But yeah, it's looking at the direct and indirect impacts of any decision you make as a business. So that's something that you need to think about. And as designers, it doesn't matter what your title is, you need to start thinking about that. You need to start thinking about it in a bigger way. And it goes beyond just moving pixels to moving people, customers, people across the business to think different ways. Going back to your question again, Jay, because that was a little bit of a ramble from my side, that I always balance output versus impact. So output could be any artifact from, have you designed a new system or a new approach? a classic thing that service designers are known for at the moment, journey maps or experience maps or blueprints. So these are detailed journeys that show the whole end-to-end process, including all the different technology systems, touch points that might come into place, so people can see the bigger picture. The impact from that side of things is, how do you help people see the bigger picture? How do you help change mindsets? How do you get people to think more strategically? How do you get people across the business talking to each other? I've worked in organizations in the past where people have been working on the same ideas and projects and they didn't even know. They just don't talk to each other. So even just facilitating those conversations, running a workshop, getting people that have created their own silos because they're fighting over budget, they're fighting over resources together to work on a common problem before they start working in it, is key sometimes from a service design perspective. So it's, how do you get alignment, but also how do you see the bigger picture? I think it's a skill that any designer should learn.
Interesting. How does a business know that they need a service designer? And because you see a ton of like job posts for like product designers, UX designers, like head of product design or whatever. But like, I feel like there's a lot of businesses that actually need service design, that they need like an overhaul. They need to build things back from the ground up. But like, maybe they don't realize it, but how can they recognize that? How can we help them to recognize that?
It's a back and forth conversation. You can probably tell by my expression over the years, I've had those debates in organizations, but when I'm just about to go into an organization as well, I look at the maturity of an organization in terms of, have they interacted with some service design elements in the past? And I've got this thought around, you don't need to be called a service designer to do service design things. You can think strategically, you can think end to end, you can be empathetic, you can make sense of complex issues, you can design and create real experiences, whether they're digital or physical. You don't have to be called a service designer. You can be a product designer, you can be a UI designer, you can be a researcher. You can take some of those traits and build it in slowly. I usually use this technique when I work with organizations that have low maturity, they've never heard of service design before, or when I work with startups. Rather than telling them, this is what I do, I show them the value, and then I introduce service design later on. Going back to your original question, Jay, it's always difficult. I find that in my head, service design, they help make complex things simple for everyone to understand. And that's through having conversations, even what we're doing now, just having a back and forth, learning about their needs, their pain points, making sense of it, connecting the dots. It's a lot of elements of systems thinking bigger and thinking about how things are connected over time, the direct and indirect impacts of people's decisions, and who has the same problems across the business, and how do you get them to work with each other. That's a big part of service design as well. But to be honest, anyone can do that. Anyone can. Service designers, once again, I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying this now because I am a service designer. I think it's, in most cases, an overused profession and tagline. Everyone wants to become a service designer now. It's service design is now the most informed thing. It's less about the title, it's more about what you do and how you create impact. And that takes time. You've got to think about the organization. You've got to think about the maturity. You've got to think what problems you want to solve and what you can't solve, because you can't do it all by yourself. You have to work with people, and people sometimes have to change, which takes a long time. It might not take a couple of months. It's not as visible as designing a brand new website or a new app, for example, a new product. Getting people to change their habits and seeing how that impacts the employee experience, the guest experience, the product, the systems. That's usually the invisible part. And what I personally believe is service design is never really going to leave. It's something that's always going to be there. And AI, from what I understand, it's never going to go into organization, help them understand the strategic challenges that they're facing and get people together and help them see the whole end to end. AI will help us, but not all the way.
Yeah. I feel a bit conflicted though, because on one side, I agree with what you're saying. And actually, I saw there was a recent kind of post from, I think it's Spotify, right? They mentioned that they're removing UX from all the titles, right? They're just going with designer. Or if you're a content designer, just go with writer. Is it Shopify? Yeah, Shopify.
Let's not get
One of the
in
two.
trouble.
That's not good. But yeah, I thought that was interesting because it kind of aligns with what you're saying there, Daniel, in the sense that, anyone can be a designer. It's just what problem you're solving and what you're working on. But then equally on the flip side, I kind of debate it in my head in the sense that not every skill set or individual kind of skill sets might be needed in certain parts of the business. So maybe like a front end, front end like experience might need someone that knows a bit more about UI, for example, right? So how do you find the right individuals if you don't have the naming convention, right, that we're using for these designs? Like, how would we find a Daniel if we knew we needed a service designer?
Yeah.
Like, that's also, I'm a bit conflicted.
I'm always scared when people ask me this question. I think there's one Daniel Tuitt, and that's more than enough the world needs. Full stop. But there are certain skill sets, and I actually agree with you. I think if you need someone to be really good at visual design, in terms of creating a design system or developing a really sleek wireframe or even environment, you go into a hotel, for example, and you just know that someone had a great eye for just making everything just connect straight away. There's a certain feeling you have when you go into a space, for example, that not everyone can do. I think server design is quite unique in itself because people come from different backgrounds. I've worked with people that are psychologists, people that are traditional designers, UX, UI. I come from a business background, to be honest. I did graphic design when I was in college, but when I was in university, I had a balancing act to say, I'm really good at visual design, but business just made sense. And when I first started in my career, I worked for this large tech consultancy firm, and I learned about design thinking. And the work we did really leveraged that systems thinking approach, where we looked at how do we design things and create things with customers, but also how do we work with the behind the scenes developers, engineers, designers to create something that's bespoke for them. So that really helped my thinking. If I was going to hire anyone, or the type of skill sets I look for is someone that's curious, someone that likes to ask questions and takes a step back. A big part of server design is almost being a detective. I don't know how old your audience is, but I always go back to Columbo, where he's going around, he acts a little bit goofy, and he asks these simple questions, but he's just trying to extract information to build a puzzle. What do we need to know about this service or experience that's broken, or what we're trying to create in terms of a new way? So that curiosity is always a first thing for me. Being a good stakeholder manager, so being able to engage with different stakeholders, some senior, some junior, in the middle. How do you talk to people, and how do you keep them involved and engaged over time? Storytelling, I think that should be a key thing as well. How do you convince people to change the way they think? If you're working with someone that's been in the industry for 30, 20 years, for example, they've got a certain mental model, and they need to change the way that they perceive the world of a problem, because they only know one way of working. But it takes good storytelling that usually comes with data and evidence to back that up. But you're convincing them to change the way they think about the world, about a problem over time. Those are some of the classic things. And there's a little bit more detail into that in terms of, can you design good artifacts? How good are you at adapting in a very fast paced environment, for example? That's always key, but also resilience as well. Moving from working as a consultant to a corporate now, I found that one of the biggest challenges I've had is political intelligence. I'm really terrible at that, but also I'm starting to build my resilience. People saying no, or people saying we've done this in the past, or there's this very archaic way of thinking when I've worked in different organizations. So I think that's some of the key skill sets you need to develop. But it takes time to develop these skill sets, and you need a safe space. You need the right type of mentorship. You need the environment where you can fail fast as well.
Yeah. And do you think that, because obviously I know you're currently working at Riyadh Air, and you're looking to kind of build out the team there. Do you feel that your hiring, or the way that you're going to hire people, is changing? Like, do you feel like you're looking at some of those things that you mentioned a bit more than you used to, especially with the impact of AI? And do you think hiring's changed for you?
I think it's impacting a lot of the workforce. A little bit of a plug for myself. I actually wrote an article a couple of weeks ago about this same issue, where I feel very, very sorry for the next generation of designers and junior people coming in, because AI is just making a lot of designers, a lot of people's lives a lot easier. ChatGPT, Copilot, Claude, all the different AIs, things that would usually take me months to do, I can do them in weeks and sometimes even days, just because it's helping me process things a lot quicker. And usually a junior person will be doing all that legroom. So I'm really concerned on that side of things. I can see the pro to this is if we can get people that are all the things I said before, curious, good storytellers, able to interact with different stakeholders, that's a good skill set to have for junior designers in itself. We do want to hire more people, especially more Saudis, because once again, it goes back to the 20 vision vision in terms of how do we ensure that we're getting more jobs for local Saudis itself. But I think it's a lot harder. When I was on the job market, it was just pre the recession back in 2008, I think. I was really dating myself now, but we're just overcoming the worst of it now, and the job market was hard then. But now we've got AI. We might be going back into recession again. Designers, they can't be cookie cutter. They can't just be, oh, I know the double diamond, or I've got a mediocre portfolio, or I've just gone to, let's say, the same school as everyone else, for example, or boot camp. There needs to be something unique about you. I keep on telling a lot of people I'm mentoring, how do you think about the world? What really excites you? How you present this to senior stakeholders? How can you convince people to think differently? How are you building relationships over time? These are the skill sets that would not just help you when you're junior, but as you grow up as well as a designer.
But I wonder with that, Daniel, because I did read the article that you wrote there, right? And I think one of the things you mentioned in it was that there's a big influx of boot camps, but then there's not enough roles, right? For like entry level roles for people coming in. How does like a junior designer now stand out in those bits that you were mentioning there, right? Like how do they show that in their portfolio, in their CV, and, you know, in everything that they're kind of giving to, because there's going to be such a big competition of people trying to get for that same role, right? So how do they stand out and show those things? And also, how do you assess them as well, you know, when you're actually kind of doing the hiring process?
So my nice version, you're right. So there's supply and demand issue, full stop. There's a lot of designers, not enough roles, full stop. My cutthroat answer to this is we are living in a meritocracy where the best people should be successful. In itself, we're not looking for mediocre people. We're looking for people that are the best in their class in terms of the way they think. And I understand that people develop in different ways. My nice answer to this is it takes time. You might not always get the perfect role you want from day one, but have a long-term vision. So if someone says no, or if you keep on getting no all the time, why are people rejecting you? And can you go somewhere else to develop your skill set? So before I finished university, I was able to work for a small innovation startup. I started applying for general roles because I wanted to get into consulting very, very early on. I got to the final stage. They said I wasn't ready, and they said I had these certain skills I need to develop. I actually looked back and did some reflection for myself, and I realized there's huge gaps there. Where can I fill those gaps in? Where can I volunteer? Where can I go and work for a startup, for example? So I reached out. Once again, this was in the 2010s, very, very early on. Things were different, but I was able to reach out to a startup, share my passion, share what I liked about the company. And it actually gave me a chance. And that helped me develop my skill sets. And actually went back to that consultancy firm and said, I've learned all these amazing things. This is how I look at the world at the moment. So that storytelling piece. And I think I was one of the first people in my year to get a graduate program, which was really unique. It's not like that now because it's really competitive. And you can see on LinkedIn where you've got people that have these special billboards. They go into Canary Wharf, or they go into a certain city area and they're saying, take my CV, blah, blah, blah. That's very gimmicky. You want people that can add value straight away. And it takes time. And you need the right type of middle management there as well. And I think we're losing a lot of middle management in terms of good design leaders as well. So that's just a thing, full process.
Well, so many questions.
Please.
I feel like I want to go kind of back and forth, but I'll kind of focus on kind of that topic for now. How do you know that someone is like excellent, right? Because you said that you want the best, right? And every company wants the best. And it's becoming more and more difficult for people to kind of showcase that they're the best because they're all coming from the same boot camps. You know, you said that they need to kind of show something unique and bring that to the table, and also be, as a company, be biased to impact. How can someone demonstrate that they can make a significant impact? And how do you know that you're selecting the best candidates from a sea of applications?
So a couple of thoughts here. One, It's all about how they think about problems and how they think about the world.
Mm.
So if anyone's going to work for me in the future, this is a little bit of an insights around how I think. I want them to understand how they think through a problem from end to end, from the problem, from the solution, but also delivery and implementation, how that's going to be measured from the experience, service, and products in whatever way. I always look for attitudes. I think you can always train your skills. So there's a classic term of, and I'm just kind of going to try and think about it. It was in the back of my head. I think I've got it now. Talent beats hard work until talent doesn't want to work hard anymore. So I always look for that hard working person that's always trying to develop and build themselves up. They could be both. That's great. But I try to look for people, and you can usually see in their CVs and their attitudes that they want to work hard. They really believe in themselves, or they need someone to believe in them. And as a mentor, it doesn't matter if you're, let's say, a C or D student, I will try to get, I've got high standards, so I'll always try to make sure that you are a person in terms of skill sets. So I always train people up to become the best version of themselves. And some people got different skill sets. Some people are very extroverted, introverted. Some people are better at data. Some people are better at storytelling. Some people are great at putting together decks or research. I try to look at their skill sets, think about what they're really good at the beginning, and see what they can work on. And I focus on what they're really good at first to give them that self-belief. But then I also start working, give them opportunity around how they can develop themselves and things that they're weaker at, so they can become that A-level person.
How can someone demonstrate that they're an A-level person from their CV? Because that is the entry point, right? Like, if I put out a job post today, I know for a fact I'm going to get over 1,000 applicants. And then it's going to go through a system, then it'll go through a TA team. But how can someone demonstrate that they are like an A player, like on paper? And then we can kind of get them through the interview stage where they can actually kind of demonstrate it.
That's a tricky
That's one thing I struggle with,
Yeah.
even like personally, and if I'm kind of reviewing like applications, it's like, how can someone actually really effectively get that through?
So that's a real question. You got me sweating now. It's a difficult one. To be completely honest, sometimes you just don't know. I try to look for people to send over their portfolios rather than just their CVs, because everyone could go to ChatGPT and say, make this CV good so it can go through screening, for example. Anyone can do that now, and that's no big secret. But a portfolio, in terms of how they present their work, how they think about how they demonstrate the most important things, that shows that they're really good in terms of they can deliver their work. And when you start having those conversations, that's when you start to know, yes, this person's got something special about them over time. And to be honest, people I've hired in the past, they may not always be, as I say, a level A type of person, but they've got the potential to get there.
Mm.
And sometimes I want to work with those people because they've got a little bit more drive. Maybe their parents said, no, they can't do this, or they got fired from a previous role and they said you weren't performing, and they've got that itch to scratch. I like those people a little bit. They've got a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, as well as those A people as well.
That's interesting, actually, that you kind of touch on that. So, like, for instance, people who have been exited from companies from whatever reason, right? It might be performance, might be restructuring, it might be something else. A lot of them go into the job market and they feel like that is going to be a hindrance to them. If they let out that, they were fired, like, for want of a better word, that employers are going to see that and be like, oh, they're going to get disregarded, right? Bottom of the pile. What would your advice actually be for someone who actually has gone through that or is going through that currently and listening? How can they still, like, should they, I guess, showcase that, demonstrate in one way?
That's a really important point. I'm just trying to frame this in a clear and compassionate way. I would say if anyone's got, and it's a challenging time in the market, full stop, I would say definitely reflect what's gone right, what's gone wrong. Sometimes your manager might tell you and give you some advice on why you were not performing the right way, or maybe they won't. Or just reflect on where you want to go next. I think some people are the right person, but in the wrong environment. And I think environment plays a big role sometimes. And to be completely honest, I've been fired and let go over time. Over the years, I've been in this career for long enough, 12, 13 years now. So I know what it feels like to be successful and not be in the right environment. But sometimes when you're in the grind, when you're trying to do the best you are and that environment's not supporting you, that happens. But also I've been in places where I've excelled and I've been able to be my best, and you kind of know that as you get better and better and better. Any advice I'll give to anyone that's just got let go or they don't think they're in the right place, it's think about what makes you thrive, the people around you. Maybe it might be the work-life balance, where you want to go next. I always do a reflection journal every quarter. I think about things I want to start, stop, continue. I think about wins and losses, things that have gone well. This could be work life, this could be family, this could be anything, and things that I've basically lost, challenges. I always try to balance that out, just be very reflective. I'm a reflective person in myself, so I like to go back and just journal and think about what's gone wrong. But I think that's something I'd really get people to think about. Where did you fail in the past, and how can you make sure you're not repeating the same thing again and again and again? Because if you're not learning from mistakes,
I think that reflection journal is actually kind of really key. Actually, I don't think a lot of people. I think people do reflect, but I'm not sure how many people actually document their reflections. Right? It might just be a passing thought, but I think it's actually powerful to actually write something down because you're actually getting it out of your head, right? And then once it's somewhere, it becomes actionable, right? It's not a thought that gets kind of forgotten. It's something that is like permanently placed somewhere that you can actually go back to and remind yourself of, and kind of tailor kind of your future outcomes.
And to add to that, I think it's also about how you, like, can you be truly critical of yourself? Because I think that's sometimes difficult, right? It's like, can I take a bird's eye view, take a step back and look at what I've done? If I'm judging myself, is it good enough? Like, or was it good enough? Or could I have done things better? I think that being critical of yourself as well really helps.
I think it does.
Good.
And I think like you touched on a really good point in terms of environment. Because like, if I see an application and I've noticed, there might be a gap or something, or I'll bring it up in an interview, and sometimes I can see the sweat kind of coming down someone's face. But it's not that I care that they got exited. Like, even if it was performance, like I don't really care if it was a performance thing. It's more from my standpoint. I just want to understand like how did they deal with that situation, like kind of what led to that. And I've often found that it is an environmental thing. Sometimes people saw a great opportunity on paper and then they kind of entered that kind of business, and then it just wasn't set up for them to kind of really showcase their skills or showcase their excellence. And maybe, joining me and my team will actually, kind of do that for them, right? And they can excel and they can be the best in the team or in the company and make an impact. So sometimes I feel like it's hard for people I feel like people do sometimes hold back from kind of really kind of reflecting and being kind of forthcoming when it comes to these kind of trials and tribulations that they might be going through. But I think it's useful if the interviewer can try and like draw kind of those answers out, because I think that tells you a lot more about them. And for me, like resilience is key as well. So if someone can go through that and still be resilient and, kind of build themselves up from that, then that tells me a lot about their mindset. And I think, they can actually contribute significantly to the team.
Exactly. I'll actually build on what you said as well. So some people they don't like to write things down, but they might have a close friend or they might have a design community that they work with and engage with. I've got a friend, we kind of joke, we call accountability buddies. When we're going back and forth, and every quarter we have conversations, we learn about what's going right and wrong. We kind of support each other, but also I've got a coach as well, and he forces me to do 360 reviews. So I would get some feedback from my team, from my manager, from my manager's manager, from some of my friends around what am I doing well, what am I not doing well, areas I can improve on, and whether they see me in the next 3 to 5 years as a person, as a leader as well. And I think that gives you that unbiased reflection, because we can say, oh, I was fine. It was them. It wasn't me. That could be an issue sometimes. And you don't have that reflective muscle. It's something you need to build on. I'm very, very direct in terms of if I've done something wrong, I'll blame myself 100 times, to be honest. But that's just my mentality sometimes. But some people, they don't see that. But you just got to think about what works for you.
Mm.
Yeah. And it is interesting that you speak about having that mentor, and I think there's no excuses nowadays, right? There's so much you can do, there's access to people on, different platforms that you can speak to someone for free and just kind of get that feedback, even if it's not your manager, it could be anyone else, right? So yeah, I feel like there's no excuse really. And I think, coming back to that point about, circling back around to how can someone, rise above the others? I've always thought that I don't want to say the term like hustle, because yeah, you do have to do that. But I feel like you also have to kind of almost hit every single mark, right? It's like, you've got to have the good portfolio. You've got to have the CV. You've got to done your due diligence by maybe sending that portfolio, making sure the hiring manager's got it, making sure that, the designers in the team might have even seen it, to kind of create a bit of a buzz about that individual. It's like, and again, that reflection, if you're critical of yourself, have I touched all the points? Have I done everything I need to do? And then I guess it's a question of, has that worked or not? What do you think?
I think that's important. First of all, having self-reflection and just knowing that you're always growing is key. And I kind of agree, hustling until you burn out, because there's been lots of data around this lately where a lot of designers are burning out now just because they're working late nights, or they're under pressure now just because, they think AI is going to take their job. It should actually make their life better. And if you're in an environment where you think your role's at threat because AI is coming in, maybe the company doesn't understand and value design. That's another conversation as well. This goes back into storytelling. How do you educate people? I think the most important thing is, and the thing that I'm learning is, how do you create impact in your role? Or how do you think you're going to create impact in the next role? How can you start systemizing some of the things you do as well? This is less for juniors, but more for people that are midway, lean, senior, heads of at that level. What are some of the systems you can do? How can you be more of a visionary? So you're doing less of the pixel moving or the tactical work, but you're focusing on influencing, building allies in the organization, and making sure there's alignment there. You're almost the linchpin, the person that's supporting people to see the wider vision, and people are saying your name when you're not there in a good way. That really adds value over time. To be honest, it's an exciting time to be a designer, if the way you think about it, because I think AI is a way that helps the industry shift and evolve. If you're the right person, you can see AI as a threat. We can see this as an opportunity. How can this make me better? Or how can this rethink how my role will change and how I can be ahead of the curve? And that goes into hiring as well. What is your CV going to look like? Have you created let's say, an AI agent to help you do some work, for example? Have you looked at a certain trend and you've applied an AI lens or technology, or have you seen how customers or users, directly or indirectly, have been impacted around it, positively or negatively? Some people are excluded because of AI, for example. If you talk about that in an interview, you've got my interest. I want to learn more about you. I want to bring you on my team because you've got a new way of thinking, and you've positioned yourself in a way that jumps out to anyone else that's been through an accelerator program or a boot camp, or just gone to university for 3 or 4 years. You've got that yes and way of thinking.
You mentioned AI being a threat to like junior designers. Do you think it's also a threat to leaders?
Once again, it all depends on how you think about the world and your idea. And let me rephrase that. I'll think about the question again. So pause, back again. It all depends on, as a leader, how you think about AI and how is it going to impact your team or your role. I do it as well. There's too many leaders that are player coaches that are actually doing the work and trying to lead a team at the same time. And you can't do, well, for me, I can't do both great. It's really hard for me. I can't do a really great piece of work, for example, tactically, and also be strategic and work with senior stakeholders at the same time. There's not enough time in the day. AI is supposed to help us, and it goes back to systemizing and automating some of the processes. What are the things that take up most of your time that you hate doing, where AI can speed you up and you can focus on the things that really add value and impact in your company, but also to your customers as well? I think that's how we need to think about things. So from a leadership side of things, yes, there's going to be a shift, but I think the role of the manager, the leader is going to change, and you should be one that's advocating for that change rather than focusing on, oh, this is all I know, and this is the way my role is shaped, and this is all I'm going to be. It's how is AI going to help you evolve your role so you can be better.
Interesting. Yeah, I've been in a few kind of think tanks recently, and with industry leaders across like tech, like data engineering, design, product, etc. And everybody seems to think it's going to impact everyone except leadership, which I find quite humorous, because I feel like it threatens everybody. I don't think any one position is safe. I feel like it's still kind of too early to really know what the true impact is going to be. We know that AI is becoming a great executor. There's tools like Replit, Lovable, etc., kind of Stitch, etc. Like they're getting really good at doing kind of general kind of UI design, kind of out of the box kind of UX kind of design, and I think it only get better as the years kind of progress. But it's the creativity side of things that I think the leadership are holding on to the most, and saying that, well, the AI needs someone to be their creative director, to be their storyteller, to kind of create that narrative. But could there be a future where the AI could do that too? Potentially. It might not be great now, but, could it do it?
I think it could be. But it goes back again, if you only see that's your role as a leader, how are you adapting over time? So storytelling, the creative director, for example, what other things can you add value to? Can you understand more about the business, for example? So the way that the CEO thinks. Yes, you can use AI to create a replica to say, this is what my CEO, this is what my chief financial officer, this is what my chief operation officer would think about. And you can go back and forth. But being able to negotiate and influence them, that's a human to human thing. AI is not going to come into the room and tell them how to make a better decision over time. It might work in the next 10 years, probably, but I don't see it working now, to be completely honest. So you need to think about what are some of the things that either can replace or make your life a little bit easier, and where are the areas that you can go into that can actually, I wouldn't say be AI proof, but make you a better leader. And it goes back into that influence, elements of storytelling. Being in a room again is completely different compared to just a Zoom call. I think that's another issue that's impacting a lot of junior people as well. I think during COVID, a lot of people have used to be working remote, but you're not really seen as much. You don't have those small micro conversations. You don't start picking up the behaviors of, oh, this is what a director's doing or a VP is doing or a head office doing. You just see them on the screen. They're perfect, or their camera's off in most cases. So I think being in a room, actually being around humans again, building that empathy, understanding body language is going to be really key. And AI, yes, it might be able to work if you have a camera in the room, but it's not going to be the same.
You mentioned influence several times in this conversation. How does one lead with influence? Like, how do you influence your kind of stakeholders to the point where they actually listen to you and do what you want them to do?
Oh, I'll scratch part the do what you want them to do. So influence for me is
do what they should do.
There's
do
different ways of framing influence. And I think the definition from when I say influence is, how do you help them make a decision that's best for them and best for the business and best for the end users in most cases? That's what I'll frame as influence. How I'll do that is understanding what they care about. I always think about it as they are the hero of their own story. They might be making a decision that you disagree with, but why are they making that decision in the first place? It's not really manipulation. It's just understanding the way they think about things, empathizing with those stakeholders. Maybe they might be under pressure. Maybe they might have minimal budget. Maybe they might have just had a bad day and they're making rash decisions. How do you support them to make their life better, but also infuse something that can help them make better decisions? So it's less about what you want them to do, but make better decisions over time. And it's a skill that's continuously developing. The higher you get up, the more that influence is going to be key. That storytelling, being a visionary, helping them see the future. A big part of what I try to do in organizations I work with is, how do you help them understand what's going on currently, but also think about what's going on in the next 3 to 5 to 10 years? So that visionary process as well. That's really key. A lot of senior leaders, they just don't have the time and headspace to think in that way, and helping them understand what that future could look like, but also how do you help them make better decisions is always going to be a powerful tool.
Yeah, it is always, the influence is going to be a key factor. And, I'm just thinking do you think we'll lose some of that going into the world of AI though? Do you feel like some of that influence might diminish a little bit, not because people don't want to do it, but maybe because we need it less? Do you feel like more decisions will be made at high level using AI, or not having to ask others for advice on certain things? I don't know. That could be something we might see. What do you think?
It could be. It's a challenging one. I'm trying to think that'll be a terrible future. Imagine, right? I think, and this is coming from a service design perspective, our role will be even more important because we need to communicate that decision making across the rest of the business. In a lot of organizations I've worked with, it's how do you get the whole business to be aligned on a specific vision? The C-suite would understand exactly what direction is going, but the executors, the product owners, the developers, the designers, there might be a level of misalignment, or there might be a lack of communication. As a service designer, you can have a role in terms of helping shape what that looks like and helping bring that vision to life. So I think that's where the value of service design and value as, I need to say service design, being a strategic designer really helps. It's connecting those dots.
And the reason I was saying it was because, just to give more context, is I had an interesting discussion with someone the other day, in the sense that we're talking about like one of the biggest challenges that you might ever have with a leader or a manager is micromanaging, right? That could be a big challenge you might have. And, AI is something that can actually facilitate more micromanaging, right? Because you're able to get more answers and actually depend less on the individuals and people. So, yeah, do you feel like there's a need for leadership to think a lot more consciously about how they use their team and how they make sure that they're getting the most out of the team, and also not micromanaging and not taking over everything?
I think there's a role of ethics around this as well. So AI could be used in a certain way. And we're seeing a lot of, it's a huge trend as well of offshoring. We've seen design teams in, let's say, Colombia or India or other places around the world as well. Sometimes you'll need that. But if you've got designers on premise, for example, I always tell my team, you're adults, you're supposed to manage your own time. All I care about is the outcome. I can coach them, I can mentor them in terms of how I'd like it to be done, but also I'll give them some space around what that would look like. It all depends on the managers. And I think I'm just thinking about this in real time. There might be an element of how do we train leadership to better use AI to get the best out of their team? I think we need to rephrase the conversation. It's less about, okay, we've got this AI platform that can help us manage performance reviews for 10 designers, for example. We need to rephrase it in terms of, as a leader, what type of team do you want to lead? And will AI help you? Will you have the right type of people? How would you create a better ecosystem where AI can create more harmony over time? So you're creating the right type of cultures. It's not an element of micromanagement, as you said, but you're enabling people to do the right things. Because for me, it's all about the impact at the end of the day, not how many hours you spent on the laptop changing a color 20 times, for example. It's, have you made a better decision? Has this improved the customer, the employees, whoever's life in certain ways? Those are the things you need to speak about. So if you can measure it, that's better.
It's an awesome point. I love that. That's a really nice reflection point there. Like, the AI can help you be a better leader, right? Like, if you use it in the right way, if you think about how can the AI help me in my leadership role, and how can it help me to develop my team, like you said, or even the hiring process, right? Like, we spoke a bit about that, because that's got to change as well. If we think about the whole blueprint, we spoke about the designer, but what about the leader? That person also needs to think, how am I going to find the best talent with this new world of AI? You've seen it in schools, right? They're thinking now about, how do we assess students now? Because they're just going to go on ChatGPT, or they're just going to do all their, assessments on that. So yeah, there is an element of that, isn't there?
Yeah. I think there's an element of push and pull as well. Do you have the right type of leadership style to attract the right type of talent so your design team can thrive? Or are you getting the wrong people or the right people on board, but AI is forcing you to become the wrong leader for them? and you're pushing away talent. You want to attract the right type of people. These people that are either at an A grade or they've got that ambition to be better. You want to attract them. Some people need that environment where they can play, where they can think. Some people need a little more structure at the beginning. So I think AI can definitely help from a culture perspective. Whenever I hire a new person, I always try to think about, is there a pre-alignment? What are your strengths, weaknesses? What type of tools do you like to use? What type of environment do you like? Some people love deadlines. Some people don't like deadlines. Some people want more structure. Some people want less structure. Some people are very collaborative. Some people like to engage one-on-one. Some people like to have daily check-ins, and some people like to have every bi-week just to catch up for an hour. So it's understanding how they work. And I think AI in some cases will help you identify the right talent, but also how to train that talent as well to be the best people they can be.
Does that mean having to like flip a switch in terms of like your leadership style? So I think from what I'm hearing, it's about kind of being flexible and adaptive to kind of team members' needs rather than just having a kind of blanket style. Right? Some people need that micromanagement. Some people need that flexibility. Right? You mentioned like people need deadlines. Some people don't, etc. How do you know when to kind of flip the switch and be that hawk hovering and kind of be that kind of something else that just like takes a step back and lets that person flow?
It's a tricky one, to be honest. I've changed my management style over time. I used to be very one note. I treat every team member the same. That did not work. Just because people are people. People have got different backgrounds, different ways of looking at things. Some people, they take feedback on very well. Some people don't. You got to manage that as well. I always try to give people that chance, that space. And if I see there are gaps, I will come in a little bit closer just to support them. I don't see it as me being a helicopter boss, for example. I see it as, how can I support them to grow? And what's the best way that will work for them? And we usually have reflection sessions. How did you find that project? It's very busy where I'm working at the moment, but retrospectives are so important just to understand their perspective as well, because sometimes they might change their behaviors and it's nothing to do with the work. It's external situations, family issues, stressed out, yada, 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 other things. It's understanding the context of people, and people change all the time, and being malleable, being able to adapt your leadership style for different people at different points of their career, at different life events, is going to be key.
Interesting. I remember, I'm just reflecting back as you're talking. When I was a young designer, I dreaded that, where are we with this kind of message or email kind of at the time. And that just made me kind of adapt to, okay, well, how can I be more proactive in terms of communication? I think, so that's how I've dealt with like micromanagement. It's more about communication. I feel like the micromanagement comes when the person feels like they're not being kept in the loop, or they FOMO kind of thing, like they're missing out on something, right? Like a critical piece of information that's really important to them or whatever. So I try and get to them before they get to me. If that makes sense. And I try and kind of encourage the team to kind of work in kind of a similar kind of way, in terms of like, especially if they're remote, like try and over communicate things, even if it's like a 2-bullet kind of update, like just kind of send that across, just so the person kind of feels that they're in the loop, you're on the same page at all times, they have a chance to respond to you kind of in real time and that kind of thing. So I feel like that's how personally I've kind of managed this whole kind of micro kind of management thing. But as what Warren said about the AI kind of side of things, I can also imagine a situation where you can use the AI agent to be the one sending that, where are you with this kind of message, right? And be like, if this person hasn't responded within kind of 2 days, shoot this message across and things like this. And that can be really annoying.
It depends. So it goes back into systemizing and automating some processes as well. And I love that that example you gave. In a past life, I usually used to do start days and end days. Give me 5 things, or the list of things you want to achieve today. And at the end of the day, what have you actually achieved? And if you've missed them, why have you missed them? Because a big part of being a leader is actually giving designers the space for them to do the work. So they're not in countless meetings, or they're not doing things that are low value, for example, that's taken away from the actual key role as well. That's key. A question I'll throw to both of you as well, I'll put on the interviewer hat or the hosting hat now, is what's your maximum when it comes to direct reports? So for me, over the years, I've realized 6 people I can directly have as reports where it doesn't get too chaotic. I'm not just having my whole day with catch-ups and not trying to, what's it called? It's less chaotic for me. So do you have a...
I'll let Warren answer that first.
Yeah, it can be challenging because you want to make sure that everyone's got the FaceTime. So one thing I did was I removed I kind of only focused on my managers, right? So I only focused on the 6 people that I managed, and then they had direct line reports as well. So I kind of removed all catch-ups as the team was growing, and I just focused on my managers. But then some of the feedback in pulse surveys and stuff from the team was like, we don't get any chance to speak to Warren or kind of ask questions about the direction and the strategy and things like this, right? So I had to bring those back in. And it is so valuable, right? Because the things that do come up are, things that I just probably would never have known, and it might just be a small thing, but it just sparks the conversation then to kind of have a discussion with the leadership team. Hey, should we focus on this? Like, can we do this to kind of help our team or, drive something forward, So the FaceTime's important, but I think it's about not killing your time as well, right? So I do like a monthly with the whole team, but then I just do like a bi-weekly with my managers. And the monthly with the team is just like 30 minutes, but the managers one's more like an hour. It's a lot, but it's so crucial, right? And yeah, for me, it's something that's non-negotiable now. I don't know about you, Jay.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I've been in situations where I've built a team up and like we've got to, like, say 20 designers, and at one point all of them are reporting into me, and then I had to kind of create these kind of layers within the structure, so then I end up with like 2 people reporting into me, which is a lot more easier, etc. Then I've been in other situations where I've inherited a team, and I had 8 people reporting into me, and the team was like almost 20. And then I reduced that down to 4, which was very manageable, right? But in both of those situations, it was very much me kind of leading at a kind of very high level, like very strategic, etc. Currently, it's more so I'm leading a team of about 10 or 11, and we don't have those layers just because of the growth of the business, right? Like we're scaling so quickly that there's more squads being kind of built. So naturally, as they build, they've become my direct reports kind of thing. So that is a bit more kind of like challenging because you still need to be in the weeds of the kind of projects themselves, but also like spend the time with the individuals to make sure that they're getting what they need, they get the FaceTime. So one way that I kind of manage this is I don't necessarily enforce the one-on-ones. It's more so kind of team member led kind of like process. So it's not necessarily mandatory. They're booked in, but it's not necessarily kind of mandatory. But we do have, say, performance kind of one-on-ones, right? So like when it comes to like professional, and the reason I've done this is because it just manages my time a lot better. It allows them to kind of free up time for the work as well. And then I also have weekly kind of like team all hands sessions. So in those weekly sessions, we kind of collaborate on, I give a strategic overview of kind of what's going on kind of across the organization. They get a chance to have kind of Q&A and back and forth with me, with the entire team. And also we have like very kind of rapid like status updates. So what's going on in kind of each of these kind of like 10 kind of product areas. And then on a monthly basis, we have kind of several kind of ceremonies. So we'll have a kind of innovation session. So we just look at the entire kind of app and kind of platform and think, well, what technologies are available kind of for us, and like how can we kind of leverage that to make our experiences better for customers and kind of yield kind of business impact. And that just brings the team together, because in my area of the business, the teams can be very kind of like siloed because we're horizontal across the entire app. So it's my way of kind of just bringing us together and just like jamming on ideas and kind of building that kind of design community kind of internally. And then additionally, we also have these monthly deep dive sessions. So I'll split the team in half. So we'll have like 5 do it for the first month, the next 5 do it for the second month, and we go deep on the topics or the projects that those team members are working on, then that gives the other team members a chance to see or have visibility of what's going on elsewhere on the app, and kind of vice versa. And then we can have Q&A, share ideas, all that kind of stuff as well. So that's how I kind of keep everyone kind of together. It's more kind of community driven, whereas before it was very, in my early career as a leader, it was very formal, like, because I went through like leadership management training and all this kind of stuff, and like you must have like this structure, it must be one-on-ones on a weekly basis, it must be this, must be that, blah 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 blah. Then you end the month with a team kind of retrospective and whatever. But I've discovered that this kind of style kind of really kind of like works for me and for the team, and I feel like it kind of fosters more of a kind of like casual, kind of like friendly kind of environment where everyone's, you know, kind of pitching in. Everyone's got that, I don't want to say safe space, but like everyone feels kind of confident to kind of challenge one another because they're getting that face time regularly with each other. And it kind of like just breaks down the layers. Because I feel like as soon as there's layers in between, then people who are more kind of like junior in the team or kind of entry level, they don't know if they can approach you anymore, or they feel like they're not having the face time. I had the same as Warren in one of my organizations, that we don't get to see Jay, we don't spend time with him, we don't know what he's thinking, etc. So I try and like keep things as flat as possible. But I do feel like once it gets to a certain point where you do need to kind of just reduce things a little bit in terms of how many kind of direct reports you have. So I don't know what the exact number is.
Yeah.
And I think it also does depend on whether or not you're a player coach. So a good example is how I can describe things working extremely well. But then there have been opportunities that have arisen, right? Where maybe, you know, we've kind of lost someone leading a particular area of the app or in the business, and I've had to step in to kind of cover that area. So now I'm a bit of a player coach in a way, right? I'm doing a bit of IC work, etc. Then that means the leadership side gets more challenging, you know? So I think it kind of depends on the nature of your role and if you're kind of getting dragged into other things. And as the company scales, I think if it's a large business and it's extremely kind of established and those layers are in place, then, you know, I think it's a lot easier. But if you're in a scale up, for example, it can be challenging because your day-to-day changes so rapidly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bit of a long-winded answer, but
No, I love it. I love it. It's it reminds me of, so you mentioned vertical versus horizontal. As a service designer, I think I create the most impact in terms of horizontal, so going across the business. But I know service design, sometimes it could be in the customer experience area or the IT area, or maybe there might be a design area because service design is very immature or very, very young. How have you seen the best in terms of design play a role? Do you see yourself just being in a specific area, or do you see yourself in terms of the squad model where you get to have designers across the whole business?
I love being across everything.
Yeah.
I think if I'm assigned to just one vertical, let's call it that, I think I would lose interest. I'll do a great job, but I think because of the nature of kind of my leadership career so far, I've been thrown into the deep end. I've been in large organizations, I've been in kind of startups, etc. And I have to context switch across like so many different product areas, etc. Just focusing on one thing, I feel like I'll be in a situation where, okay, what do I do the rest of my time? Because I'm having to be so like clinical in terms of like how much time I spend in certain places and like really go deep. And if I'm locked in on a particular task, that I go all in for say 30 minutes, an hour, smash that out, go on to the next thing. If I've got too much time to think about things, I'm like, okay, like what next? You know, I feel like I'll just get my job done in like a fraction of the time and then have the rest of the week to just go to a beach or something, you know?
Well, do you have any thoughts at all? Anything to build on or challenge?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I think it depends a lot on the setup of the organization as well. Because I think of, if I'm across everything, it also depends on how big is the role of leadership. Because that could be at like a CDO level, or it could be at like a, you know, smaller team level, like a head of, I don't know, a manager. Like, it depends on the organization and how you kind of set up and the size of the organization, right? Because if there's loads of teams, if it's a huge design team, it actually makes sense to then fraction you out, right? Like in different areas, because actually the scope is huge of that area. So it's still a lot to do, but it would be too much to do everything, you know? So It's a hard one to answer, but I kind of agree with Jay. I like to be across a lot of different areas. And I think one of the things that we're looking at the moment is, or something that I've been quite interested in looking at, is how do you also make sure that you're not just focusing too much on the design side, but you also think about the product analytics side as well. How do you expand and make sure that you're covering all of those bases? Because there's a lot of creative ways that you as an individual can impact metrics, can impact data, and all these different things, right? So the role of design shouldn't just be so focused on the experience and the output, but also like, yeah, driving the KPIs and also making sure we're measuring things correctly, just everything, right? So that's something that we've been looking at as well, like in terms of how do you broaden your scope a bit more as well, and how do we get the individuals in the team to think a lot more about the full scope?
I agree, because I think I'm just kind of reflecting back on the answer I gave. It's because you're spread across so many different things. I feel like your learning of the business is accelerated, right? So when you're positioned to say you're going to be head of design for a particular kind of product area, right? You go really deep on that thing, right? And then what I've noticed in different organizations that I've been in is that's how silos are formed. Whereas if you're horizontal across everything, you have to, like, you're forced to know the ins and outs of what's happening in each of the business areas. So you get more of a kind of helicopter view of what's going on, and then you can better influence stakeholders in multiple different ways, but also drive more impact that kind of goes across the entire kind of customer experience. So I feel like that is the position that I feel like I thrive in. Whereas if I was to focus on just kind of one part of it, I don't think I'd be as effective.
Yeah, I definitely agree with being across everything helps you connect the dots. And that's how you can build relationships and get people to start working with each other to say, we're all working on the same problem, let's work together rather than being on silos. I think that's naturally across all organizations I've worked with as they start scaling up. Natural silos start to build out. And as a service designer, I try to break them apart and get people to connect with each other. Silos can work, especially when you need to do something quickly and fast. But when you're launching a new product and service and one part of the business has another idea and one business is against it, you need to have that clarity, or you're just going to have internal fighting. And rather than being the best in the market and trying to beat your competitors, you're fighting against each other.
How do you feel, Daniel, that service design can evolve from a leadership perspective? Because I've seen a lot of service design teams, right? But I feel like it's still not as mature in certain organizations as it should be. How do you think service design can scale? Like, I'm not saying we're going to have like a chief service designer or something like that, but there could be, right? I guess. How do you see this? How can it scale?
So I think a lot of the skill sets, I talked about this before in terms of influence, sense making, storytelling, aligns to leadership. And we've seen places like Airbnb, for example, where they've had designers and they've thought a lot more strategically. So I'll shift that question to see, in terms of service designers can become leaders, it's how do designers in general become more strategic in the way they think about problems, how they bring things together, how they connect the dots, how do they present those ideas to evangelize things internally, but also to their stakeholders, to their shareholders, to people across the environment itself. I don't think I agree with you, Warren, in terms of that sense of chief service officer or whatever the title would be. It might be as high as I've seen some heads of service design and maybe directors of service design, but I think that's as high as it can go. I just see more of the mindset than the job title itself, where people can think in a certain way and that will lead them to more very senior roles in leadership, where they understand the whole bigger picture itself. So I don't think there'll be a title. I just think it's those mindsets that will continually grow and sharpen to make sure that they're ready for C-suite.
I think it's that kind of VP of design or kind of CDO, kind of position. I think to be in that position, you need to think holistically.
Exactly.
You need to think about all of the customer touch points. How are your customers going to be using it? Where are they going to be using it? When? Who with? All of these kind of scenarios that the product teams probably aren't thinking as deeply about. And having that helicopter view, as I said, kind of allows you to influence those teams, right? Because they're so focused in their areas and their own problem spaces. They're not seeing how everything kind of connects together. And I think being in that position will actually put you in a pivotal place where you can actually, kind of demonstrate value kind of very quickly, and I think once you start doing things like that and operating in that way, you get pulled into conversations, right? So once you've added some value somewhere, someone's like, oh, that person knows what they're talking about. Let's bring them in. Let's get their opinion on this,
Exactly. I think this conversation is going full circle a little bit because it goes back into, I think anyone can do server design. And I'm seeing people from different parts of the business that are incorporating that thinking. They might be part of products. They might be part of strategy. They might be part of, let's say, sales, for example, or customer experience. But they're thinking in that very holistic way, and they're starting to wear that strategic hat and start to almost build those relationships across the whole business. So it's not just their team. They're thinking more like a VP. And I think that's, once again, going to the AI piece, that's what's really going to help us when we start pivoting as design leaders. We're not thinking about being a player coach or focus on, we know a certain skill set no one else can learn about. It's how do we get people across the business and also our partners in most cases to work with each other to create more value.
And and I think that really does go in full circle, right, Daniel? I mean, this conversation has been amazing. We've touched on so many interesting topics. And Daniel, for anyone that wants to find you or read any more of your articles, where's the best place to find you?
So LinkedIn is always good. I'm on ADP list as well. So amazing design people reach out to me there. And I've got a couple of Medium posts as well. So I'm always open to people that just message me and just say, hi, I saw you from X, Y, and Z. It would be great to connect with you. And I think going a little bit into my own background as well, I found that I was always an outsider, moving from business to design. And my key kind of way of thinking is I want to help as many designers as possible. So how can I pass it on? How can I create a ripple effect? If I support anyone that wants to get into design, serve design, I want them to pass it on. So it's almost creating a better community over time. So always happy to have a conversation.
And just one more thing. Any tips for anyone that's interested in moving to Saudi Arabia or thinking about getting a role there? Any tips you can give?
I'll say do your research, be open-minded, and start building your network as well. It always helps if you can speak a little bit of Arabic as well.
Great.
Great.
Awesome. Lovely having you on the show.
It was a pleasure, guys. Thanks.
Thanks, Daniel.